There were rumours that the inspection hadn't gone well.
32 years summed up in one word.
I would do anything I could to sit down and tell her what an amazing teacher she was.
When you hear it, it hurts because it feels like one of our own.
Her impact on the community is just huge, and her loss is just huge on the whole Caversham primary community.
It's terrifying because you know you can hold it to yourself and it's your secret at that point, but you know at some point it's going to go public.
She died because she was so sad. And she was so sad because of what somebody had said about the school that she loved.
I hope you enjoyed what the children have prepared.
Ruth Perry, teacher, mother, community leader.
I would like every child to look back on their school days with as much fondness as I have. And if we achieve that, then I'll be very happy.
Education was her vocation. 32 years summed up in one word: inadequate. It just preyed on her mind, sadly, until she couldn't take it anymore.
In November 2022, everything changed.
She texted me back and said, "I can't speak now, for the worst day of my life. The Ofsted inspectors have been in and it's dreadful." And that was it. So I sort of said, "No, it can't be that bad." She said, "Yes, I think it is. It's about as bad as it can be."
On the first day of their 2-day visit, inspectors downgraded Caversham Primary School in Reading from outstanding to inadequate, the lowest level.
All during that process, every time I spoke to her, she would talk about the countdown. I remember clearly one day saying 52 days and counting. So every day she had this weight on her shoulders, hanging over her, and she wasn't officially allowed to talk to her family. And I remember the very first time I saw her, rather than just speaking to her on the phone, a couple of days after the end of the Ofsted inspection, she came. She was an absolute shadow of her former self.
2 months on, the pressure became too much.
This one-word judgment was just destroying 32 years of her vocation. Ruth took her own life on the 8th of January.
A former pupil at the school, its deputy and then head teacher, her sudden death shocked the school and local community.
I heard the news via a WhatsApp from someone and was in utter shock. The fact that she took her life was just threw me. I don't think it really kind of sunk in for several weeks that actually it was possible. It just didn't make sense. Her impact on the community is just huge, and her loss is just huge on the whole Caversham primary community. Sorry.
Okay. You okay for a moment? It's just a final question. Take time.
She was one of us, wasn't she? She was a parent. She was just one of us.
The report found leaders at the school had a weak understanding of safeguarding requirements and procedures. A lack of oversight, staff training and poor record keeping were also highlighted. It said these weaknesses pose potential risks to pupils. Many other areas of the school were judged to be good. Some felt its conclusion was unfair.
I think we're patronised as parents. Nobody can look at a report unless it has a one-word summary. The entirety of a school's fabric, its staff, the education provided, summarised in one word. It just is a nonsense to me.
Caversham Primary is an excellent school. That my children, they can attest to that and our experience of it. And it still is. Its leadership is doing wonderful work to carry on the ethos and the work of the school, and to have that judged in a snapshot of experience and to have that judgment given is heartbreaking, because it is a very good school providing a wonderful service and love and support and care for the children of the community.
For more than a decade, schools graded outstanding became exempt from inspection, but since 2020, re-inspections have led to hundreds of previously outstanding schools being downgraded. Ruth Perry School, which hadn't been inspected for 13 years, is one of 5 out of 359 to be moved to the bottom grade since September 2022. News of Ruth Perry's death started a nationwide conversation. Teaching unions, school leaders and members of the education community called for inspections to be suspended, but Ofsted rejected this. The groups also called for a formal inquiry into Caversham Primary's report. One head teacher decided to take more direct action.
Ofsted protester head says she'll refuse entry to school inspectors tomorrow following the suicide of a fellow head teacher. Ruth Perry took her own life ahead of the publication of a critical Ofsted report.
Inspectors were eventually allowed in and the protest called off. Some parents, friends and former colleagues said change might be necessary.
Now, I absolutely feel that there needs to be regulation in schools, just like any other sector. But I think that Ofsted now is a very, very blunt instrument, and it's a very punitive way of judging somebody's entire teaching life.
We've got to stop this name, blame and shame culture that we're living in.
Change the system. Ofsted need to come in and have more of a holistic approach, suggest ways to improve rather than saying you need to improve and then walk off and leave them.
It's about nurturing and supporting those kids and being by their side. And it just seems that Ofsted maybe need to be a bit more like that, or a bit more like how Ruth was to me and how she supported me when there were areas that I needed improving.
James Pope knows the pressures of teaching leadership. He resigned from his job at a rural comprehensive in Gloucestershire, which had been graded inadequate by Ofsted. His story was told in a BBC documentary.
Good afternoon, colleagues. Thank you for your time. Sorry to cut off your conversations. I was going to come straight out with this, so I just wanted to call you to a meeting this afternoon to let you know that I'm stepping down as head teacher of my old school. Pause there. I'm going to let that sink in for you, and also for me. If you don't mind if I just take a little bit of a breather, then that would be nice. Some of you have heard me refer to Marwood as child number 5. Children 1, 2, 3 and 4 have been missing out a little bit on daddy time over the course, especially of the last 12 months. What we found when we came back in the September, which happened to coincide with the period of time that the television cameras were there for that academic year, what we then found is just a huge unravelling of the culture that we'd created. So if you tell children that they're inadequate, how are they going to behave? And so we notice huge drop-offs in our behaviour, we notice huge drop-offs in the attendance of children, all things that we'd worked really hard to resolve. And I'm painting a fairly dark picture, and this is my point about I don't think the judgment is representative at all. Actually, everybody was still working very hard, but some of those subtle things, those nuanced things that bind a school community together that we'd worked so hard to create, I described it at the time, it was literally like watching sand drift through your fingers. You know, all of that stuff that you built and you done, it was just, and you can't hold on to it. It's very difficult to hold on to. You know, when you're in the Ofsted window, when you're waiting for Ofsted to come, the feeling is constantly one of fear of they're going to find out that I'm not doing a very good job, or they're going to say that I'm not doing a very good job. And so you spend all of your time worrying about it. Then the inspection happens, and the feeling is very much because of the way that Ofsted operate during that 1 or 2 day window where they're inspecting your school, it feels all of the time like they're trying to find out that you're not doing a very good job. So it's this sort of negative culture that exists. So you're rubbish until you prove that you're not rubbish.
In a statement, Ofsted said,
Ruth Perry's death was a tragedy. Our thoughts remain with Ruth's family, friends and the school community at Caversham Primary. I'm deeply sorry for their loss. Ahead of the coroner's inquest, it would not be right to say too much, but I will say that the news of Ruth's death was met with great sadness at Ofsted. We know that inspections can be challenging, and we always aim to carry them out with sensitivity as well as professionalism.
It has changed over the last 30 years, and I'm sure it will continue to change. And the great debate now is whether we continue with grades, and particularly the summary or overall effectiveness grade, or not. And there are problems in doing away with that, which I think the next chief inspector will have to address, because a judgment of good is what parents want to see. Reports are written not just for schools but for parents. They want to know whether they're sending their children to a good school or not.
The Department for Education added, Ofsted provide independent, up-to-date evaluations on the quality of education, safeguarding and leadership, which parents greatly rely on to give them confidence in choosing the right school for their child. Whatever comes next, many say Ruth Perry has left a lasting legacy.
My children mentioned the memory when they went on a camping trip. She always did the overnight shifts. So she would sit up by the campfire during the overnight so the other teachers could have a rest, and that she would do that shift, and that was her thing that she could offer in that trip. And she was very good at that. If there was a child, they were taking them swimming and one needed one-to-one, she was in the water. And she did that extra mile. And I remember very strongly what she wrote in the yearbook for our children when they'd left, the preface that she wrote. And she told them to follow the school's core values. But she said the most important was compassion. She said, you should always be kind. And she told them to go out to the world and make it a better place for everyone.
I would do anything I could to sit down with Ruth Perry and tell her what an amazing teacher she was, and how I have seen material benefit from her governance and her leadership in that school. But you can't. That's the finality, the tragedy of the situation. We can't go backwards, but we can go forwards and say things have to change.
She was my sister. She was my little sister. And she was a mother who had doted on her daughters, and she was a lovely aunt. She was a daughter. My parents are still here, and they've had to live with this, with losing their daughter. And it's terrible, it's heartbreaking.